The Uncensored Tales, the stories they never told you. Welcome to the Uncensored Tales, the original folklore and fairy tales from around the world, exactly as they were told before anyone tried to soften them for delicate ears. What you are about to hear is the true, unfiltered story. You think you know the story of Cinderella? You don't. What follows is the original tale published in 1812 by the Brothers Grimm, before anyone thought to spare delicate ears. Once upon a time, in a kingdom not far from here, there lived a rich man whose wife fell ill. On her deathbed, she called her only daughter to her side and said, "Dear child, remain pious and good, and the good God will always protect thee, and I will look down on thee from heaven and be near thee." Thereupon she closed her eyes and departed. A year later, the man had taken another wife. The woman had brought 2 daughters into the house with her, who were beautiful and fair of face, but vile and black of heart. Now began a bad time for the poor stepchild. They took her pretty clothes away from her, put an old grey bedgown on her, and gave her wooden shoes. "Just look at the proud princess, how decked out she is," they cried and laughed, and led her into the kitchen. There she had to do hard work from morning till night, get up before daybreak to carry water, light fires, cook and wash. Besides this, the sisters did her every imaginable injury. They mocked her and emptied peas and lentils into the ashes, so that she was forced to sit and pick them out again. In the evening, when she had worked till she was weary, she had no bed to go to, but had to sleep by the fireside in the ashes. And as on that account she always looked dusty and dirty, they called her Cinderella. It happened that the father was once going to the fair, and he asked his 2 stepdaughters what he should bring back for them. "Beautiful dresses," said one. "Pearls and jewels," said the second. "And thou, Cinderella," said he, "what wilt thou have?" "Father, break off for me the first branch which knocks against thy hat on thy way home." So he bought beautiful dresses, pearls and jewels for his 2 stepdaughters, and on his way home, as he was riding through a green thicket, a hazel twig brushed against him and knocked off his hat. Then he broke off the branch and took it with him. When he reached home, he gave his stepdaughters the things which they had wished for, and to Cinderella he gave the branch from the hazel bush. Cinderella thanked him, went to her mother's grave and planted the branch on it, and wept so much that the tears fell down on it and watered it. It grew and became a handsome tree. Thrice a day Cinderella went and sat beneath it, and wept and prayed, and a little white bird always came on the tree, and if Cinderella expressed a wish, the bird threw down to her what she had wished for. It happened that the king gave a festival which was to last 3 days, and to which all the beautiful young girls in the country were invited in order that his son might choose himself a bride. When the 2 stepsisters heard that they too were to appear among the number, they were delighted. They called to Cinderella and said, "Comb our hair for us, brush our shoes and fasten our buckles. We are going to the wedding at the king's house." Cinderella obeyed, but wept, because she too would have liked to go with them to the dance, and begged her stepmother to allow her to do so. "Thou, Cinderella," said she, "thou art dusty and dirty and wouldst go to the festival. Thou hast no clothes and shoes, and yet wouldst dance." As, however, Cinderella went on asking, the stepmother at last said, "I have emptied a dish of lentils into the ashes for thee. If thou hast picked them out again in 2 hours, thou shalt go with us." The maiden went through the back door into the garden and called, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds beneath the sky, come and help me to pick the good into the pot, the bad into the crop." Then 2 white pigeons came in by the kitchen window, and afterwards the turtle doves, and at last all the birds beneath the sky came whirring and crowding in, and alighted amongst the ashes. And the pigeons nodded with their heads and began pick, 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 and the rest began also pick, 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 and gathered all the good seeds into the dish. Hardly had 1 hour passed before they had finished, and all flew out again. Then the girl took the dish to her stepmother and was glad, and believed that now she would be allowed to go with them to the festival. But the stepmother said, "No, Cinderella, thou hast no clothes and thou canst not dance. Thou wouldst only be laughed at." And as Cinderella wept at this, the stepmother said, "If thou canst pick 2 dishes of lentils out of the ashes for me in 1 hour, thou shalt go with us." And she thought to herself, "That she most certainly cannot do." When the stepmother had emptied the 2 dishes of lentils amongst the ashes, the maiden went through the back door into the garden and cried, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds beneath the sky, come and help me to pick the good into the pot, the bad into the crop." Then 2 white pigeons came in by the kitchen window, and afterwards the turtle doves, and at length all the birds beneath the sky came whirring and crowding in, and alighted amongst the ashes. And the doves nodded with their heads, and began pick, 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 and the others began also pick, 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 and gathered all the good seeds into the dishes. Before half an hour was over, they had already finished, and all flew out again. Then the maiden carried the dishes to the stepmother, and was delighted, and believed that she might now go with them to the festival. But the stepmother said, "All this will not help thee. Thou goest not with us, for thou hast no clothes and canst not dance. We should be ashamed of thee." On this she turned her back on Cinderella, and hurried away with her 2 proud daughters. When no one was now at home, Cinderella went to her mother's grave beneath the hazel tree and cried, "Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw down over me." Then the bird threw a gold and silver dress down to her, and slippers embroidered with silk and silver. She put on the dress with all speed and went to the festival. Her stepsisters and the stepmother, however, did not know her, and thought she must be a foreign princess, for she looked so beautiful in the golden dress. They never once thought of Cinderella, and believed that she was sitting at home in the dirt, picking lentils out of the ashes. The prince went to meet her, took her by the hand, and danced with her. He would dance with no other maiden, and never let loose of her hand. And if anyone else came to invite her, he said, "This is my partner." She danced till it was evening, and then she wanted to go home. But the king's son said, "I will go with thee and bear thee company," for he wished to see to whom the beautiful maiden belonged. She escaped from him, however, and sprang into the pigeon house. The king's son waited until her father came, and then he told him that the stranger maiden had leapt into the pigeon house. The old man thought, "Can it be Cinderella?" And they had to bring him an axe and a pickaxe that he might hew the pigeon house to pieces, but no one was inside it. And when they got home, Cinderella lay in her dirty clothes among the ashes, and a dim little oil lamp was burning on the mantelpiece, for Cinderella had jumped quickly down from the back of the pigeon house and had run to the little hazel tree, removed her beautiful gown, laid it on the grave, and returned herself to the kitchen. Twice more did Cinderella venture to the festival and dance with the king's son. On the 3rd day, when evening came, Cinderella wished to leave, and the king's son was anxious to go with her, but she escaped from him so quickly that he could not follow her. The king's son had, however, used a stratagem, and had caused the whole staircase to be smeared with pitch, and there, when she ran down, had the maiden's left slipper remained sticking. The king's son picked it up, and it was small and dainty and all golden. The next morning the king's son went with the slipper to the father and said to him, "No one shall be my wife but she whose foot this golden slipper fits." Then were the 2 sisters glad, for they had pretty feet. The eldest went with the shoe into her room and wanted to try it on, and her mother stood by. But she could not get her big toe into it, and the shoe was too small for her. Then her mother gave her a knife and said, "Cut the toe off. When thou art queen, thou wilt have no more need to go on foot." The maiden cut the toe off, forced the foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the king's son. Then he took her on his horse as his bride and rode away with her. They were, however, obliged to pass the grave and the hazel tree. Riding together they passed the grave, and there on the hazel tree sat the two pigeons, and who cried, "Turn and peep, turn and peep, turn and peep, turn and peep. There's blood within the shoe it is too small for her, the true bride waits for you." Then he looked at her foot and saw how the blood was streaming from it. He turned his horse round and took the false bride home again, and said she was not the true one, and that the other sister was to put the shoe on. Then the older sister went into her chamber and got her toes safely into the shoe, but her heel was too large. Her mother saw her struggle and gave her a knife and said, "Cut a bit off thy heel. When thou art queen, thou wilt have no more need to go on foot." The maiden cut a bit off her heel, forced her foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the king's son. He took her on his horse as his bride and rode away with her. When they passed by the hazel tree, again the two pigeons sat on it. They saw the king's son and cried, "Turn and peep, turn and peep. There's blood within the shoe it is too small for her, the true bride waits for you." The king's son pulled back on his horse and stopped. He looked down at her foot and saw how the blood was running out of her shoe and how it had stained her white stocking. The king's son held the shoe and blood poured out. He was confused as to how this could have happened and to where the true owner of the slipper could be. The king's son and the older sister returned to his horse, turned, and he took the false bride home again. "This also is not the right one," said he. "Have you no other daughter?" "No," said the father, "there is still a little stunted kitchen wench which my late wife left behind her, but she cannot possibly be the bride." The king's son said he was to send her up to him, but the stepmother answered, "Oh no, she is much too dirty, she cannot show herself." The king's son absolutely insisted the last daughter be brought, and Cinderella had to be called. She first washed her hands and face clean, and then went and bowed down before the king's son, who gave her the golden shoe. Then she seated herself on a stool, drew her foot out of the heavy wooden shoe, and put it into the slipper, which fitted like a glove. And when she rose up, and the king's son looked at her face, he recognized the beautiful maiden who had danced with him and cried, "That is the true bride." The stepmother and the two sisters were terrified and became pale with rage. He, however, took Cinderella on his horse and rode away with her. They were once again obliged to pass by the hazel tree, where the two white pigeons again were perched. The pigeons cried, "Turn and peep, turn and peep. No blood is in the shoe is not too small for her. The true bride rides with you. Turn and peep, turn and peep. No blood is in the shoe is not too small for her. Oh, prince, the true bride rides with you." And when they had cried that, the two came flying down and placed themselves on Cinderella's shoulders, one on the right, the other on the left, and remained sitting there. With a smack of the reins, the prince rode off with Cinderella. Not too long after, by the king's orders, the two were to be wed. When the wedding with the king's son was to be celebrated, the two false sisters came and wanted to get into favour with Cinderella and share her good fortune. Unbeknown to the sisters, the birds who once perched at the hazel tree too were at the wedding. When the betrothed couple went to church, the elder was at the right side and the younger at the left, and the pigeons attacked and pecked out one eye of each of them. Afterwards, as they came back, the elder was at the left and the younger at the right, and again the pigeons attacked and pecked out this time the other eye of each. And thus, for their wickedness and falsehood, they were punished with blindness for as long as they lived. My dear, That was the true uncensored tale. If the real story spoke to you, please subscribe. The next one is already waiting.